Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. The topic this time is Winter Survival Kit for Lawyers. This webinar is hosted by the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center, and speaking today will be Joshua Lennon from Clio. The Legal Technology Resource Center is an ABA member benefit provided by the ABA Law Practice Division. The LTRC has been providing lawyers with legal technology guidance for more than 25 years. You can find a variety of legal technology articles, guides, videos, and other resources on our website at www.lawtechnology.org or our blog, www.lawtechnologytoday.org. Joshua Lennon is an attorney admitted to the New York Bar. He studied law at St. Louis University School of Law, obtaining a Juris Doctorate and a certificate in international and comparative law. During this time, Joshua clerked for the Missouri Attorney General, helping prosecute discrimination claims on behalf of Missouri citizens. Joshua also studied European Union law at the University of Georgia School of Law's Brussels Legal Seminar. Joshua has since helped legal practitioners improve their services, working for Thomson Reuters publishing departments in both the United States and Canada. Joshua currently serves as lawyer in residence for Clio, providing legal scholarship and research skills to the leading cloud-based practice management platform. Thank you all for joining us. We'll now begin the webinar.
Hi. Rose, thanks for the introduction. I'm Joshua Lennon. I'm Clio's lawyer in residence, and I want to thank the LTRC for allowing me to speak today. I want to start with taking a look at something that happened just in January, the Atlanta snow jam, where 2 inches of snow fell in an afternoon, which ended up paralyzing the entire city, with hundreds of thousands of people abandoning their cars, stuck in traffic jams, unable to get home. We all saw images of people sleeping in Walgreens and CVS's. We saw school children being trapped on buses for hours on end. And we heard horror stories about people being unprepared to walk miles and miles home in order just to get home for that day. What's interesting about this is that on that day, of the 7 counties that make up the greater Atlanta area, no courts closed. And only 1 county court closed on the following day as they were still cleaning up this mess. The Atlanta snow jam paralyzed Atlanta, but it didn't shut down the courts. And this type of bad weather is not unique to Atlanta. As we've seen in 2014, it's been kind of a brutal winter. Chicago in January received 67.9 inches of snow. That's 41 inches above normal. That's almost 3 feet of extra snow in 1 month. In New York, they got a lovely 4 feet of snow that came from 14 different snowstorms this season. And even all the way down south in the bottom of the U.S., in New Orleans, they had their first snowfall in 10 years, with the temperature dropping below 23 degrees, so below freezing, which is really unusual for that part of the country. And what happened is, because they got less than 1 inch of snow, they actually ended up declaring a statewide state of emergency, with everything shutting down, including jury selection for the Ray Nagin corruption trial that is going on currently, corruption for a political official in New Orleans and Louisiana. So we see that winter definitely has been brutal and can impact you in your practice of law no matter where you go. When you travel in winter, you should probably have an emergency winter card kit. And here's a commercial one, but you can build your own as well, with things that help you with traction, signaling, keeping warm, and staying hydrated. It's an emergency kit that becomes very handy. But just as you shouldn't travel in winter without being prepared, you should also be prepared for winter's impact on your practice. And what type of impact can it have? Well, it can affect you when you have to go out. It can affect you by making it impossible to go out. And it can just create those days where you ask the question, why am I going out at all? So let's take a look at these 3 categories, how you can prepare and build your own survival kit for when winter impacts your practice. First of all, we should take a look at when you must go out. And why must you go out? Because under the rules of professional conduct, a lawyer should pursue a matter on behalf of a client despite opposition, obstruction, or personal inconvenience to the lawyer. And I can think of nothing more inconvenient this time of year than having to go out after 2 to 4 inches of snow is blowing through the streets, trudging my way scraping off my car, digging up my parking spot, and then hopefully getting to court where you hope everybody else has gone through the same personal inconvenience in order for you to act diligently on behalf of your client. It's something that's required of us, but sometimes not everybody lives up to that. So in order to meet Rule 1.3 of diligence, I think there are a couple things you can do to be prepared for when you must go out. First, verify that you have to go out. Every court should have some means of communicating, and every regulatory body, every hearing, every arbitrator should have some means of communicating whether or not they're still open. Here's an example from the New York courts. When they closed on February 14th because of snow, and they didn't even close the entire day. They just opened late. And if you were scheduled for Thursday, February 13th, you're going to be contacted for future dates. So definitely make sure you know the radio stations, the internet websites, the social media locations where all of this information is being published so you can check it easily and frequently to make sure that you have to go out. Keep this information handy as winter progresses. The next thing you should do is have the right gear. And I lived in Toronto for a little while, up in the Great White North in Canada, and I now live in Vancouver, so I'm dealing with two different types of winter weather, both rain and snow. And one of my favorite pieces of equipment is actually professional dress galoshes. Seems a little silly, but Swims creates these slip-on galoshes. They slide right over your dress shoes, and they actually do a great job of protecting you from the snow, the salt, and the slush. Now, they're not boots. They don't go all the way up to your ankles, so don't step in any big, heavy puddles. But if you're looking just to keep your shoes dry and to keep them from being eaten alive from all the salt and sand on the roads, this is actually a great thing to have. And they're available at swims.com and also at a whole bunch of other places if you swing by that website, and they're well worth the investment. And I just wanted to point out that they also come in some fun colors in case you want a little something to liven up the bleak doldrums of winter. So there are some colors across the bottom. And they even come in fun colors like camouflage. So item number one in my winter survival kit is something to protect my shoes, and this is my recommendation for it. Item number two is professional dress layers. It is impossible to look professional sometimes when you're wearing every article of clothing you have to stay warm. So instead, I want to recommend that we take a look at some clothing that's designed to keep you warm and can fit under your professional dress very easily. And so here are a couple of retailers. I've used REI Smart Wool. I really enjoy them. It's a blend of silk and wool, so it wicks moisture away from you and keeps you nice and dry and warm. A lot of this is labeled kind of as performance underlayers, but they work really well under professional dress if you pick the right colors. And so REI Smart Wool, Patagonia Capeline, Uniqlo's Heat Tech are all a mix of either natural or artificial fibers that wick moisture away, trap heat, keep you warm without adding a huge amount of bulk to you. So you can still wear the suit, you can still throw on a nice coat over it, and not walk out into a polar vortex and just freeze immediately. So in addition to galoshes, having good professional dress layers is a must for your winter survival kit. This I never leave home without, and that's smartphone-enabled gloves. And I'm lucky enough that Clio actually has some of our own. And what these gloves do is they allow you to be able to work a touch screen, like your smartphones or your tablets, without having to take your gloves off. And so when I'm leaving my building and I notice that there is 6 inches of snow on the ground, I can easily break out my phone, swing to the website to see if the court has announced any closings, swing to their Twitter feed to see if they've got any updates going on scheduling without having to take my gloves off. And I cannot tell you how many times this has saved me from just standing on the side of the road, shivering and freezing because my hands have gone numb trying to work my phone. So definitely find yourself a pair of smartphone-enabled gloves. This seems a little tongue-in-cheek, but I always keep these in my bags as well in the winter. I keep a set of Kleenex, I keep some cough drops, because winter's effect from going to hot to cold is enough to just knock your system off. So whenever I walk in from the cold, I always make sure I have some Kleenex and some cough drops handy, so that way I can quickly and easily overcome any challenges from the cold weather that's affecting my ability to speak and present cleanly. So, as I said, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but a must for having the right gear. Now that's taking a look at some gear that kind of rounds out your survival kit. But now let's take a look at what you need to have for when you can't go out. So these are things you carry. We've talked about things that you carry when you do go out in the cold, and now we're going to take a look at what things should you be considering when you can't leave. Courts are closed, weather is bad, no one's traveling. What you need are tools that allow you to communicate. Just because everyone else has declared a snow day doesn't mean that you get to shut down as well. Unfortunately, under Rule 1.4 of the Rules of Professional Conduct, Comment 7, lawyer may not withhold information to serve lawyer's own interest or convenience. Just because it's cold outside doesn't mean you get to shut down the email and not answer your phone calls. So instead, you should be picking tools that are resilient, tools that allow you to overcome the bad weather no matter where you are. And I've broken down tools into 4 categories. Tools that overcome a lack of something, either a lack of power or a lack of physical access to your files. Tools that let you communicate. Tools that work together, and tools that you will use every day even when the weather's nice. And we're going to talk about that last one in detail. But let's start by taking a look at tools that help you overcome challenges. When you're picking resilient tools, I think there are 2 things that you really need to focus on, and that's picking tools that have their own power storage and picking services over software to allow mobility. With power storage, what I really mean is having a cell phone, keeping it fully charged, having a laptop with its own battery, so that way when the power goes out, you're not immediately cut off from the things that you're working on. We all remember the days when we're working on desktop computers. Lightning would strike a transformer, or ice would blow out the local, knock down the local lines, and suddenly you have no power, and whatever you're working on would just disappear along with the electricity. If I have my own power storage, whether it's an uninterruptible power supply, the battery on my laptop, what that means is I'm able to continue working quickly and easily, either accessing my information when I need it or making sure I'm saving my current workload so I'm not losing anything, and then allowing me to go back to it when I need to. And then also, when you pick power that has its own, pick technology that has its own power storage, it tends to be portable. And that means I can take it with me to some place that isn't affected by the weather right now. So if it's too cold and impossible to get to my office, I'll have my own power at home and can use them. So having these tools works for me. But you need to combine that with a service that allows mobility. So just because I have an office doesn't mean my files should only be accessible from my office. And that's that lack of physical access that we mentioned before. If I pick a service such as cloud-based storage, cloud-based practice management, over standard install on-premise software, what that means is I'm able to access my information from everywhere, whether it's from my mobile phone, whether it's from my laptop, whether it's from a borrowed computer if I'm stranded someplace and don't have access to my own technology. I'm able to log in securely over encrypted connections, have access to all of my tools, whether it be email, whether it be my case files, whether it be my calendar. All of this information should be part of a service that you then use different types of software to allow you to access. So services are more important in terms of resiliency and keep you prepared for when bad weather strikes. You should also pick tools that allow you to communicate. And I use my cell phone for communication, but that doesn't mean I'm only making phone calls on it. I'm able to do email. I'm able to send out text messages. I'm able to communicate via Facebook, Twitter, and other channels as well, including Facebook's newest acquisition, WhatsApp, which sold for, what, $16 billion? Pretty amazing. But the point is that my tool of a cell phone allows for communication over multiple channels, and not just communication from me, but communication to me. I'm able to see, if there's been any change in the hearing schedule of my courts. I'm able to receive communications from my clients if they have an emergency due to inclement weather, if they're unable to attend a hearing, if they're having problems taking care of any of their financial matters because of the weather. When inclement weather strikes, clients tend to have increased need for lawyer representation. So make sure you're available to help your clients out. And also, you should pick tools that work together. And again, I picked the picture of a mobile phone because this is actually a great example. I'm able, when traveling, to use my mobile phone to access the internet. And I'm not just able to access the internet only on the small screen on my phone, but I can pair it with my laptop, with my tablet, sharing that cellular connection so that all of my tools now have the ability to work together. So I'll have great software on my laptop that I prefer to use, like, say, Word for typing up a document, but I can pair it with my cell phone and share its cellular connection in order to get that email out through my email service that we mentioned before. So pick resilient tools that allow you to communicate in a variety of ways and that also work together. So emails that I send show up in my communications channel in my practice management. They're downloaded between my machines because I'm using services to coordinate everything. And lastly, you should also pick tools that allow you to overcome the emergencies, but also are tools that you're already comfortable in using. And that's why I recommend that you pick tools that you will use every day. Everyday use means there's no loss of productivity in emergency because you're not having to learn a new tool or figure out where everything is because it's not organized as you normally expect it to be. Instead, you're able to just pick up your machine and get running because you've overcome the lack of power, lack of physical access. You have tools that all work together in a way in which you expect. So pick tools that you're going to be using now when you don't have to deal with a weather emergency, so that when a weather emergency does happen, there's no change. It's just I'm using those same tools, but now I'm using them from home, or now I'm using them from the hotel down the street or the coffee shop that I never go to, but now I can because there's a snow day. Resiliency means being able to just keep going, and that's what these tools allow you to do. I picked this picture of the cloud. I know the cloud's kind of a hokey term for a lot of the technology that we use out there, but I think when it comes to inclement weather, it's actually a really nice analogy because using cloud technology allows you to get above the weather that you're experiencing right now. One of my favorite moments of flying is when you kind of pierce the clouds on a rainy day and suddenly there's sun and blue sky all above you. When you're picking the right tools and you're using them every day, you're going to be above the weather like that, no matter what, because that's the type of system you've generated for yourself. It's going to be smooth, easy weather above the clouds when you pick the right tools. The last thing we should be asking ourselves is why go out at all? Now, this is, again, a little tongue-in-cheek, but we do need to go out. We do need to meet with clients. We do need to attend hearings. We do need to file paperwork for a lot of places that just don't allow online transfer. But that doesn't mean that for the rest of the work that we do, when we don't have to go out, we should be forcing ourselves to be using tools that force us out into inclement weather. So instead, we should understand that the same tools that let you stay productive on snow days also work for personal days and any other day out as well. Just because it's not shut down outside because of bad weather doesn't mean that you necessarily want to spend all day out in it anyway. If it's raining, if it's cold, if the wind is blowing, but it's not an emergency day, you should still have tools that allow you to stay home, grab a cup of tea or coffee, curl up on the couch, and stay productive. So those resilient tools that we talked about, where we pick tools with their own power storage, tools that allow services across platforms and across technology, tools that let you communicate, and tools that work together. Those tools will allow you to be productive every day, no matter whether or not there's inclement weather or nice weather, but you just feel the need to work from home that day. So I want to thank you for letting me talk a little bit about my own winter survival kit, things that help me get along in Canada. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. There are a couple ways. Joshua@goclio.com is my email address. I can also be reached on Twitter at Joshua Lennon, and I even included my LinkedIn profile, so feel free to connect.